be a fireside chat between the CEO of Indico, Tom Wilde, and the Senior Director of Digital Strategy and Automation Solutions, Abhinav Kaul from Cognizant. And they're actually going to be talking about how 45 million documents per year and 40% of savings in process costs were achieved. Cognizant did this by leveraging intelligent processing automation to solve unstructured data challenges. They were initially sort of offering a major real estate property data provider to process 45 million title and deed documents from 3,500 counties across the United States. So this was historically manually entered, which is insane. And Cognizant sought to automate the intake, classification, and instruction of these documents to capture cost savings and throughput acceleration. And so we're going to hear how Cognizant met this challenge, and how they utilized Indico's solution to do so. We're going to begin that in just a few short minutes, 12:30 on the dot. As a reminder to all of our attendees, in order to ask Tom and Abhinav questions, it's important that you head back into your timeline and click the 12:30 p.m. session. What this means is that you will be able to ask them questions by clicking the live Q&A box and submitting and typing your questions, which I will ask them throughout the session. So I want to thank again Kenny for joining us today. It is 12:30 p.m. on the dot. Just to remind everyone, if you were previously watching Kenny's opening keynote, and you are interested in asking Tom and Abhinav questions, it's important to head back into the session timeline and click the 12:30 p.m. session, which is 45 million documents per year and 40% savings in processing costs. So thank you very much for joining us today, everyone. I'm mindful of the time. I know that these sessions are short and sweet, so I'm going to hand it over to Tom and Abhinav. Please take it away, gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Jordan. We're excited to cover this topic. Just a really interesting example of utilizing intelligent process automation to solve this historically difficult challenge of unstructured data. As you mentioned, I'm joined by Abhinav here from Cognizant. I thought maybe Abhinav, to get started, let's do some quick introductions. Maybe you could share a bit more detail about yourself and about Cognizant's intelligent automation practice. I'll do the same, and then we could get into the sort of question and answers, a fireside chat format that we're going to work through here today.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I hope my voice is clear.
Yes.
Yeah. So my name is Abhinav, and a part of the technology office in the intelligent process automation practice at Cognizant. We were recently appointed as a leader in the Everest ranking as well, and happy to be on the call here. My role on the technology office for this practice is to basically future-proof the practice, look out for the tools in the intelligent automation space, and that is how I came across Indigo as one of the solutions about 3 years back.
Perfect. And I'm Tom Wilde, the CEO of Indico, and Indico is an automation solution focusing on unstructured content problems. By unstructured, we can define that as documents, emails, forms, policies, claims information, real estate documents, titles, deeds, this river of information that flows through so many organizations, both vertically around things like insurance and financial services, as well as horizontally, things like invoices and supply chain documents and things of that nature, and historically, dealt with primarily manually because the state of the art has been focused on template or rule-based approaches, which work well when the documents are fairly structured and not highly variant, but become very expensive and difficult to use when you're dealing with more variety and less structure. So that's really the fundamental topic here today. We're going to talk about a particular use case that Cognizant has tackled, as Jordan previewed, around real estate title and deed documents, which are published across the United States. And for the particular customer in question, the Cognizant customer, wanting to turn that unstructured data into structured data. So that's what we'll dive into here throughout the conversation. But maybe let's start, Abhinav, a little more generally before we get to the specifics of this particular use case. You've got deep experience across these industries deploying automation solutions, including RPA, IPA, process mining. As you mentioned, you guys were recently featured as a leader in the Everest automation services category. Talk a little bit, if you could, about what are some of the challenges customers face when trying to approach automation to capture some of these efficiency gains and these business opportunities?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So I think like about 5 years back when RPA bandwagon started, people were very much focused on structured data handling and work around robotic process automation. Of late, we are seeing that more and more customers are moving towards end-to-end automation, front-to-back office automation, as we call it. And with that, I think one of the most important challenges is to help them understand the process to the level at which automation should be done, and also understanding how do you measure the value of business, right? That automation will bring to the table. So essentially, bottom line is measurable outcomes. How do you measure them? How do you really make count them, and then understanding the total count of cost of ownership, the TCO part of it. Those are the most important challenges at a high level. And customers broadly also want to know, how do I continuously monitor and remove some of the bottlenecks in the process after the fact automation is done, right? Like it doesn't mean that once automation is done, it's done and dusted, right? There are many other things because of technology factors at that time. Like 3-4 years back, customers started RPA automations. At that time, not all technologies were available. So now the time has come to even look at how do you continuously monitor and improve bottlenecks from that process.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. In my experience, most customers view this as a blend of technology, i.e., generally software, and services. When Cognizant approaches a customer opportunity, especially on the services side, what kind of help are they typically looking for? Why is services such an important component of an automation strategy for a customer?
Right. So when we are approached by our customers, Tom, we typically get to ask about what kind of help Cognizant can offer when it comes to COE setup, Center of Excellence setup, or a shared services setup. Many a times we are asked about tools and technology advisory and adoption of the tools in the general marketplace. We being an SI, we generally are asked about our views or point of views on particular topic. Then, of course, our bread and butter is automation implementation services as a GSI. So that is, of course, one of the another ask. Identification of opportunities, because we are spread across each and every market segment. That's another very common ask. Nowadays, what we are seeing is people come to us for transformation services also. So automation is being looked upon like a digital transformation nowadays. So that's another thing. Other common activities, I would say, are around bot monitoring and process analytics using AI ML type of techniques. Of late, I would say the last one I would like to add is people are also trying to look at horizontal platforms that they would like to kind of deploy in their ecosystem, and that's another value-added service that we provide.
Yeah, I think in working with Cognizant, the thing that has struck me the most is you guys have such a broad perspective on challenges customers have. Your ability to sort of share best practices is hugely valuable in helping people, avoid some of the common pitfalls when trying to tackle automation, because there are a number of them. For example, the phrase I always use is not every process should be automated, right? Some are not ready for automation, and there's some degree of at times business transformation or process engineering that has to happen to make it suitable for capturing those opportunities. When customers often ask me, okay, well, I have an RPA platform in place. What's different here? Why can't I just use my RPA platform to tackle these unstructured use cases? What's been your experience there? When is RPA the right tool? When is IPA or IA the right tool? And why is there not sort of one tool to solve all today?
Right. So RPA traditionally has been attached to more of a task-based automation, more of a structured data type of automation. And as people are looking at their enterprises, they see that almost 70% of the data is dark data today, which is semi-structured, unstructured type of data. And for that, RPA is not really suitable. So we need to add augment AI ML solutions, intelligent solutions, to convert that unstructured data to some kind of a structured format which the bot can take and then process, right? So holistically, And that's been the problem. And over the last 3-4 years, the focus has been on RPA, but now in the last 2 years, I see more and more focus on IA and tools around IA, so that we can really implement those complex front to back office type implementations and use RPA as a last mile. Right? RPA will be there, but it could be the last mile in achieving that. Right before that, there is a lot of data gathering, data preparation, data structuring, and all of that. That needs IA tools. That's how I would put it.
Yeah, that's right. And I always describe it as the two go together. So we, in Indico's case, we've partnered with all the RPA platforms because what RPA is so good at, as you mentioned, is executing business logic against structured data, right? It is just ideal for that, as well as sort of moving data from A to B to C. Very, very strong in terms of the integration approaches there. So they're quite compatible, certainly in our experience as well, to deliver that complete end-to-end solution from data creation to data sort of data transformation, data delivery. So, and I like your terminology of sort of dark data. Sometimes we call it opaque data, but this unstructured sort of creates two thoughts in customers' minds. In our experience, opportunity to capture efficiency gains, to improve the customer experience, and also this concern that there's risk inside the data in form of things like compliance or PII or GDPR and all those things that increasingly customers have to worry about. And if they have this very large collection of unstructured, typically documents or emails, how do they know what's in there and how can they make sure they're dealing with it effectively? Why is unstructured so hard to solve? Why has it been so hard to solve traditionally? Why not? A lot of times people sort of co-mix OCR as a concept with unstructured. Why are they not the same? And why has this been historically such a difficult problem?
Yeah, so OCR has been there for the last 25 years, I would say, and people have been using a template-based approach, as they call it, or a configuration-based approach all along, right? It has solved a lot of the problems in the world today. It's not that it has not solved for, but in today's world, as I said, dark data, 70% of the data being unstructured, semi-structured in nature, you will not get a predictable structure to the way the information is coming on a document, right? Every document will be unique. And the example that we're talking about today is the deeds example. For example, 3,500 counties in the United States, every county having different format. We are talking about 50 plus document types, 150 plus document types, in fact, right? And if you look at all of these, if you start writing code and configuration for every such template and configuration out there, it will take you ages to really solve the problem, right? That's the basic essence of why you need some kind of an intelligent context-based solution to solve it, right? So that's essentially why I think unstructured is a little difficult problem to solve for.
I remember when we first started the project we're going to talk about in a moment, you were very adamant that we assure you that we weren't using rules, because the complexity of this problem you fully understood. You were sharing with us, and you wanted to make sure that we weren't falling into the sort of trap of thinking rules could solve this. The complexity here was just way too high to ever do it with templates or rules, for sure. When people use this term automation, and we're going to talk about this in more detail around the particulars of this customer's use case, but people talk about the idea of automation, and of course the industry has sort of settled on this word automation as a descriptor for the category. But how do you help customers think about automation versus sort of maybe augmentation? Because a lot of times augmentation maybe is a more accurate description of what this technology can do. How do you help customers with that?
Yeah, and that's a good question. Actually, this is a term that people keep talking about, automation, and I think you are right in the sense that we should look at it like an augmentation, as you said. I think, and I will steal one of the words that you keep using when we talk about is the concept of bionic arm that you keep referring to me always. So I like that term that you use, right? So essentially, using these tools, you are essentially augmenting the overall automation journey. You are enabling humans to kind of use these tools and the human in the loop and the validation station that comes with it to look at, eyeball or correct the information, but not spend the same amount of time that you used to do data entry earlier, right? So essentially, it's like a bionic arm, and not a robot, but a bionic arm that is helping you to kind of essentially solve the problem quicker. I call it acceleration sometimes. So essentially, you're looking at acceleration through augmentation. Right, and that's what is going to enhance the productivity. And in this use case that we are going to talk about, Tom, that is exactly what happened, right? Like that is exactly thousands of people reduced by, let's say, 40-50%, right? That's what is called augmentation here.
Yeah, this sort of human-centered augmentation approach. If someone could lift 100 pounds yesterday, you can lift 1,000 pounds, after you deploy such a solution. And so I do like that much more than the sort of robot metaphor, because a robot sort of suggests it comes in and just does the task completely. And the realities of artificial intelligence today, it is a probabilistic approach to the problem, right? There's some spectrum on which it is getting the problem correct. And so, having still a very, kind of human-centered approach, it yields the best results in terms of accuracy and efficiency. What are some of the key trends that you've noticed customers are looking for when they're evaluating solutions? And in this case, especially when Cognizant evaluated a solution for this particular customer's problem, what were some of the trends that you were trying to capture around automation?
Yeah, and in the context of the use case and the product that we're talking about, right? So if that is the case, I think we looked upon, I mean, to start with, we did a bake-off across multiple tools, as you know, right? We had a bake-off between your tool and your platform and a few more platforms. But essentially, we were looking at a citizen-led way of building ML models, right? Being data scientist free, if I may want to use that word, like not too much dependent on data scientists to build the models. Feedback loop was another important feature that we wanted to know. We wanted to know if a tool can really learn intelligently basis the corrections that the human is doing on the screen. That was another very important feature. And of course, the most important thing was auto scaling, right? Because we are talking about 45 to 50 million documents a year, literally 3 to 4 million documents a month. We had to make sure that the solution that we choose is really like in the auto scale mode, right? Like it shuts down the VMs when we don't need the VMs and stuff like that. And your platform gave us all of those tick in the box type approach. Those were some of the important things, I would say, that we looked upon.
Yep, excellent. And I think that furthering the sort of human-centered approach here, your team had such expertise in these documents. We wanted to make sure we could help you leverage that expertise. We weren't going to be able to replicate that expertise. Obviously, we're good at building our platform, but we're not experts in titles and deeds, and your team is. And so being able to make sure we could capture their understanding of these documents robustly was really the key to making this a cost-effective deployment. If we had to kind of start from scratch, it was going to be very difficult and kind of defeat the purpose of all the learnings you guys have established over these types of documents. Maybe as a transition there, let's dig into this in a little more detail to really sort of define why this was so complicated a use case. You touched on some of the data, but maybe if you could walk through again, the sort of scope of complexity here. Why couldn't sort of the old-fashioned template or rule-based approaches work? So maybe if you could just walk through that one more time, I think the metrics here are really compelling.
Sure. Yeah. So in this particular case, the customer that we were working for was trying to extract almost 100 fields from almost 50 different document types in the area of titles and deeds. And this was across all the entire United States of America. This customer is a mortgage data provider, the biggest one in the US. And we are talking about roughly 3,500 counties that they used to handle. So basically, if you look at these numbers, right, and if you do a math around 100 data points, 50 types of documents, 3,500 counties, it will easily get you into a situation of more than 15,000 possible permutation combinations in which each of the fields could be on a document, and configuring them on a tool like a traditional OCR tool, right, which uses locations and positions, would have been literally impossible, right? Yeah. So that's the massiveness of the use case that we were trying to solve for. Now, having said that, we had strict SLAs with our customers, right? There was urgent scenarios, there were non-urgent scenarios and stuff like that. That also had to be managed through the tool, right? Basically, we wanted to kind of make an augment, as we earlier discussed, right? Augment our humans and operations people with a tool that could basically extract the information, show them on the right hand side on the pane on the human in the loop validation station, show them the fields that the machine is confidently extracted, show them the fields which are not confidently extracted, hide some of those which are confident in a later phase, and then that will essentially help them to augment the entire journey, right? So that was the nature of beast we were dealing with. So that's the complexity of the use case as well.
Massive complexity. You talked a little bit at the beginning about how you help customers think about opportunities for automation and when are there sort of appropriate opportunities for automation. A lot of times we hear customers talk about expense ratios, right? Insurance and banking expense ratios are a huge part of what they're trying to solve for right now to remain competitive and to drive competitive advantage. In this case, talk a little bit about how you approached, how Cognizant approached the ROI thesis for using a tool like Indico and adding that into the existing process.
Yeah. So I think in this case, because the number of fields or the data points were very huge, we could not really achieve we could not have chosen document level STP or straight through processing as a parameter of success, right? So what we thought is the more important parameter to define is at a field level, can we achieve some STPs, right? Because ultimately the human has to look at 100 data points on a screen. Can we reduce that to, let's say, 70 data points or maybe 50 data points eventually, right? As the model keeps learning. That was our most important parameter, and hence we decided to choose a field level accuracy. And can we really achieve STP at a field level? And hence that was the metrics, Tom, that we chose to define. But industry has different views to it, and I think that's one of the fallacies of how people look at straight through processing in general, right? People think straight through processing is more around a document level automation that people can achieve, and that's one of the I would say it's a trap, frankly speaking. The way I have seen it, achieving that level of automation is really not possible, especially in a structured data extraction space, and people should look at it a little differently. And in this context, we ended up defining a 4-page STP definition, right? A definition of STP was a 4-page document that we had to really bind it with your team to define the commercial model around it and stuff like that. So that's the complexity, and that's how we decided to measure ROI.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this sort of concept of straight through processing, obviously I understand why customers ask for it. When customers ask me, how accurate is your platform? My response is usually, well, how accurate does it need to be? Because it's a little bit of a obviously tongue-in-cheek question. I expect them to say 100%, right? I mean, if they don't say 100%, then I'm concerned. So the question is really more not how accurate is the given platform you're going to use. What I like to coach customers on is think through how you're going to get to 100%, because 100%, this sort of idealistic 100% is generally going to be a combination of the platform, the tool, the services, the design, and very importantly, the human in the loop at the end, to make sure that when the platform is unsure of itself, you can intervene and make corrections to make sure that you have high fidelity output. So it's all in thinking about how do I get to 100% and how cost effective can I be in getting to 100% versus pure manual or something of that nature. Yeah, so I agree. That's often a trap for customers and a lot of coaching. And I've seen huge progress in that category over the last, say, year to year and a half in terms of customers understanding and being realistic about that. Mm-hmm. When you look ahead, I want to make sure we leave sort of 5 minutes for questions at the end. When you look ahead to the future of IPA, what are some of the things you think or you're hearing from customers are starting to ask for around automation broadly and specifically, intelligent process automation? What's next? Yeah.
I think AI governance is one of the most hot topic that I keep hearing back, especially from regulated industries and customers in that domain. They are asking us about how do I know that the model is giving the right output? What's the explainability behind it, right? That has been one of the most important questions, and I think your platform does provide that information. That's one of the other reasons that we decided to go with it as well. But I think that is the biggest one. But going forward, I also see that a lot of traction would be there on automation on the cloud, right? Intelligent automation on the cloud, a SaaS-based model, so that people can just plug and play Lego blocks together using an iPaaS platform like Power Platform or Catos and the world and whatnot, right? So those kind of things. So that's what will be the future, right? It will be around citizen development, around automation in the cloud, around having Lego blocks so that we can assemble a string of pearls together type of solutions. That's what is going to be the future in my view, and it's going to be pretty exciting in the next 2-3 years.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff. Okay, really great detail, Abhinav. Thank you for that. I want to make sure we leave a few minutes for questions. So I'm going to turn it back to Jordan here and see what kind of questions the audiences have queued up here that we can tackle. So Jordan, what do we have in the Q&A there?
Hi, guys. Well, I do have a first question that I'd love to know. A lot of RPA vendors are now pitching AI and cognitive solutions. What advice can you give on how to vet out the different technology and whether the tool being offered can really solve unstructured content?
Yeah, Abhinav, do you want to kind of take the first part of that, which is when a vendor is sort of asserting an AI approach, what are some of the things that you look for to determine sort of the depth of that technology or suitability for a use case?
Yeah, and Tom, I'm assuming that this is in the context of unstructured content, so I will limit in that context, right? So,
sure.
And if that is the case, then obviously the ability to feedback the information back to the model, right? The learnability part of what the tool can provide is one of the most key things. Otherwise, we are back to the old configuration-based approach, right? Because every time we'll have to go back and retrain the models and stuff like that, which of course will be, but this will give you an automated way of ML training and automation around it. And I think the other one would be citizen-led development, right? Can business users create ML models? That I think is another data point that we should look at. Very, very critical, because if you get into this unstructured data problem, like if, for example, if you look at LIBOR as an example, you've got complex contractual documents. As an IT shop, you will not be able to decipher the data unless you are a business SME, right? And hence you need to give an ability for the business users to tag, annotate the data on a tool, and then that creates a model behind the scenes. So that, I think those two are the most critical things for me.
Yep, excellent. Jordan, next question.
So earlier in the conversation, you guys did mention the idea of creating an ROI thesis, and I would love to get some more advice on how you would suggest formulating ROI in order to get that crucial executive buy-in for an automation project.
I think that, in our experience, and I think Abhinav touched on this earlier, it's very important to start at the end and work backwards. I think sometimes customers miss that step. Really try to answer the question, if we only had what data could we impact what outcome, right? Those sort of two questions to start with, and then work backwards. Okay, how do we generate that data? Where are the documents coming from? Do we have to re-engineer any part of this process to get at that? The ROI typically comes from some combination of how much time per task or how many dollars per task are we spending today, and what would we need to reduce that to make this a viable opportunity for automation. So, we actually build a simple calculator with customers that turns, the investment into a bottom line ROI to help them, go to management and get justification. And to be honest, sometimes we go through that exercise and we find that, hey, the ROI, just isn't here. Either this isn't a big enough scale of a problem, or the complexity is so simple that, it's so lacking such complexity that, you're better off kind of continuing to do it as you are. But I don't know, Abhinav, if you had any other thoughts on that.
No, I think, Tom, you covered. I think tying the complex automation CBA to an outcome, right? Like what kind of outcome can you get, whether it is whether that outcome is kind of linked to a strategy objective that you're trying to achieve, or is it going to reduce the SLAs for your customers, or free up some people for doing something else, right? Those type of outcomes is what we need to look at and explain the business case to users, right? I think more often than that, Tom, the complex automations which involve unstructured data, I think the most critical thing is to look at them as strategic technology investments, and try to make that case as well, because that one problem that you're solving could solve many other problems or similar problems in the enterprise, right? That's the big picture vision that people should look at, not just that particular problem, but what else can we solve if that problem gets solved, right? So that's another way to look at it.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Well, Jordan, I think we're at time. If we have time for one more question, fire away. Otherwise, I'll leave it to you to run the clock.
I am sorry, we are going to have to cut you off. I'm just mindful of the fact that we have about 30 seconds left before the timer runs out. So I want to thank you both so much for joining me today to discuss this incredibly interesting case study. Thank you very much for joining us. If anyone does have any more information, they can reach out to Indico through the sponsor booth in order to learn a little bit more. Otherwise, I want to thank you both for joining us, and you can now exit the virtual stage.
Excellent. Thanks, Abhinav. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you both.